Nerd on the Podcast is proud to be powered by Focusrite, Embody, creators of Immerse Gaming, Odyssey, Amazon, and TCG Player. Enjoy the show.
Hello, welcome everyone to Nerd on the Podcast. No?
Oh, my.
Was it not? I saw this.
No,
I
He
saw
was just
this.
doing this.
We
He was
were
just
like-
doing jazz hands. He was just doing jazz
Good
hands.
start,
Tom.
everybody.
That's how we do it. We're back,
Yes,
baby.
we're doing
Tom,
it live.
It's not a real podcast if Tom doesn't mess up something. If
That's
the
true.
Technology, whatever.
Yeah.
But anyways, welcome everyone to Nerd on the Podcast. You didn't need but deserve, where all levels of nerd are welcome. Let's
You
introduce
gotta
the
watch
host real
the
quick.
video to know what just
Yeah.
happened.
I was like, what was it? I was so scared. Everyone.
It's been a while. Stretch it out.
Let's
stretch it
introduce the host. I'm Tom.
I am
I'm
Josh.
Corey. Josh,
So
you're
good.
always last if you're not opening. Do you remember the rules?
It's true. There are
It's been a long
rules.
time. It's been a minute.
Am I the only one fucking around here? What does he say?
Am I the only one
Look up.
around here that gives a shit about the rules? Anyway,
Yeah. So out of all the things we've done this episode so far, what we want to talk about is in the pantheon, the zeitgeist, in the plethora of all the things in the world. There's so many things to watch, consume, engage with, retweet, TikTok, whatever the fuck you want to call it. Today we're talking about the things that we keep coming back to for some reason. The title of the episode is things we go back to for the 100th time. Maybe a little bit of exaggeration, but you know what we're talking about. You have done it yourself. You see that there's a new movie coming up, but you're like, I'll come back to this. See, there's a brand new $70 game that's probably garbage from a AAA studio that's half baked. You're like, I'm gonna come back to this game.
Small indie studios, Tom.
Yeah, some like
No.
that. You know what we're talking about, and they don't have to be small things. They could be great, big, huge things like
Yeah.
Jurassic Park or
No,
the
I
Star
just meant
Wars
all those,
things.
AAA studio, the joke. Oh,
Yeah.
Blizzard, a small indie company.
Oh yeah, small ones. They haven't figured out yet.
Wizards of the Coast, that's a small indie company. They'll get it. They'll
but-
get it eventually.
Before we jump into it, because it is going to be a little free form and we're all just going to throw out topics out there and talk about them, we want to do something that we've been continuing doing as we've come back, and that's to dedicate this episode. We always want to take a moment to honor the listeners, all of you wonderful, beautiful, nerdy people who keep our lights going on, who keep our communities alive in our Discord and show up for our streams and make us feel like, our podcast is here for y'all. And it's lovely. Of course, we would love to talk about these things, but who would we be without someone to talk about it with? And so this episode is dedicated to you, Black Diablo Mamba.
Mama.
You
You
Get
get a
our
shout
nerd
out.
on. Yeah. So with that being said,
And it was said,
Corey, Josh, what are some of the things that you keep coming back to
you.
for the 100th time, baby?
There we go. And the episode. You know the drill, as always. No, just kidding.
Always you, Tom. Josh, what you got?
I'm going to do a deep cut for myself. A game
Hell yeah.
that I can always I know that if I play it, it's just going to be like a nice. It's like those nostalgia hits that you're like, yeah, get it right in my veins. I love it.
Oh, yeah.
Even if you've played it 100 times, beat it, whatever. Final Fantasy VII.
Mm.
I can go it was for, I had a Switch for a hot second, and that was on there, and I played that on there. I've played it probably in every iteration. When I had my Switch, it was
Wow.
released on PS4. I played that to completion. But I mean, that was a game that I put, back in the day. It's a little bit more regular nowadays to be like, oh yeah, I put 80 to 100 to 200 to even hundreds, thousands of hours into a game. Like back then, it's like I put probably a couple of 100 hours easy into Final Fantasy VII, because I remember wanting to complete it, get all the materia, get all the bosses, all the blah blah blah, and easily hundreds of hours of grinding and whatnot. And I just think, it was a special place in in my time of life. Hanging out
But you
with
still can. You still can go back. I mean, it was, that was our first episode, right? Didn't you talk about it?
Yeah.
That was your tree of nerddom.
Wow.
So it's
Yeah.
It's definitely something that seems like it doesn't wear on you the more you play it, which is
no. I mean, there are some times that I'm like, okay, I just don't want to grind right now. I just don't want.
Yeah,
to.
sure.
It's like, but I'm like, give me the fluffy stuff. I want to watch like it's a world, like specifically the Final Fantasy VII world is like something that I really enjoy when I see a new like, oh, Sephiroth is in this game, or like these kinds of things where you're like, oh, like, look at there, it's a thing. It's so it's just as an actor, as a voice actor,
the FF70U.
Yeah, oh, yeah. I mean, as an actor, as a voice actor, I would love to be in any game related to it. It would just be like one of those full circle moments that you're just like, this is happening. I remember when my friend said, hey, my stepdad got this game for our PlayStation. Do you want to play it with me? I've been watching him play it. Do you want to play it with me? And just like all the music is like still in my head, and just like still some of that music just slaps.
And you looked at him, you're like, this is my game now.
This is mine. I know that I got it. Like, I think it was around my birthday, and I was like, I want this game. I want this game. And it was but like, it wasn't even a 2-player game, but we made it a 2-player game when it's like, okay.
Yeah, you figure it out, man.
Yeah, you figure it out. It's like, okay, I died. It's your turn. Or like to the next boss, the next save point.
Or like, okay, this battle is yours. This battle is mine.
Yeah. So
Tom?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Josh.
No.
Sorry.
No, Tom.
Honestly, if it's something because I'm very big on like, I don't want to rewatch things. I don't want to redo things. I'd rather just try to get new experiences as much as I can. So this actual like topic is pretty antithetical to me, but something that I fall victim to is I do come back to some things like this for like pure joy and enjoyment of it. It's probably Ed and Eddie.
Okay.
Not gonna lie, it's weird. Like I love anime, and love Ghibli stuff. I have such a appreciation for Genndy Tartakovsky and Craig McCracken and John McIntyre and Avatar. But like Ed and Eddie, this like very scribbly. You would think it's kind of like a quote unquote not pleasant looking art direction to the animation, but it's something that it just reminds me and makes me feel of like being a kid during the summer. Like the entire premise of the first few seasons during like, I would call like almost like its original run, because there's a moment in all the Cartoon Network shows where they're all like, oh, we went from like I don't know, it's weird, they went like from like 240 to like 480 or something like that, or like out of nowhere, all their animations became like digital, and it became very sharp, and all their colors became very like saturated. But I would say like during its quote unquote original run, it was all about them in the summer and them
in the
goofing off, making dumb things in the cul-de-sac. And I realized there's a lot of that similar DNA that like, Disney Channel original movies where they would make weird contraptions, quote unquote, work. And, now that I've worked in, television for some time now, I see like, oh, this is a gag. And like Nickelodeon's very big on that, where like, here's like a vacuum cleaner combined with this. Now it's a ghost capture device. You're like, oh, that's what they used to do all the time. Like kit bash things together. And Ed and Eddie was like, to me, like the beginning of that, as well as like it ends and begins there at the same place. And it's just crazy and weird and funny and all the expressions on there. But like the music is so like not of its time. It just kind of transports you in a place, and I really enjoy Ed and Eddie for that. Like I try to consume as much as I can of it, where like, oh, there's games, let me try to play it. These games are garbage. But like the show itself, like to me, always stands alone. Like whenever I'm on watching random YouTube, I'll see like someone's like, oh, here's an entire playlist of the episodes. Like I want to watch those again. Like I will just enjoy that, being in that place and hearing those things. Like it's very Pavlovian, very like maternal child womb feely,
nostalgia.
Like, nostalgia. There's no better word for it, but like, yeah, it's just, it brings me to that place, and I can't help but just like come back to it, and especially like in a sea of like, I'll go like months and months and months and months just like watching movies. Right now, like at the time of this recording, I'm at like 75 movies I've watched this year. Like I've been just watching and listing all of my letterbox. It's an effort for sure. And so like I try to break. I'm like, all right, let me go fucking watch something. So I put on like Ed and Eddie. I'm like, all right, like something I'm not having to like absorb new information with.
Mm-hmm.
Corey?
Knights of the Old Republic coming at you
It
live.
finally has a place.
It's for real though this time, which is nice. Knights of the Old Republic is one of those games that I meme a lot about on here, but it's because it's one of those games
for
that
a reason.
for a reason. It's comforting to kind of a mix of both of y'all's points, where it's like I think Dustin and I got it at the same time. We did this thing where we set up two TVs in my living room.
That's
like
wild.
I brought I think he brought his little TV the first time, and I had a little TV I brought to his house to like finish it. We played it side by side, making different choices and all that kind of stuff. And to Tom's point, it's just like I get that rush of nostalgia, like hearing the voice actors, hearing the music. And it's one of those games too where there's so many different options that every time I play through it, it feels a little different if I want it to be. Or I could be like, you know what? I really liked making this choice in this quest. Or, you know what? I really liked trying to go get this lightsaber color. Or, you know, what if I try killing this guy this time? Like it's one of those gifts that keeps on giving kind of games. It's also, I think, one of the first games that I paid attention to like writing in it, where I was like, holy shit, they're like building something. They're building something incredible
It's
here.
not just a video game.
Yeah. It was such a, it was like, it did a really good job of capturing that like soap opera, space opera feeling of the original Star Wars, but you were at the helm. And I don't think that's ever really left me. And so when I play it again, like sometimes I don't even, I won't even finish it all the way to the end, but I'll put in like 20, 30 hours just for fun and just see what happens, Yeah, man, it's just, I'm crushed that the remake was stopped. I still haven't recovered from that fully.
We're still consoling you.
I'm still working through the trauma of that.
Yeah.
Of wanting a remake for 20 years, and they're going, "You got it."
You know what needs to happen is Square Enix needs to buy it, because nothing stops Square Enix from doing anything.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my first choice. It's a little warm blanket that I can just sit in my own world and kind of live in.
Josh?
Well, I mean, it's, I'll say one, like, I'll say things that were return tos in the past. Harold and Kumar was a movie that, at a time in my life, I'll be real, I haven't watched it since we did the episode a few years ago. Wow, years. And I, at the same point where it's just like, I can watch that movie, and I remember the feeling of just like, it's dumb. The humor is just dumb. And it's one of those movies that kind of like the Big Lebowski, that it would be on my list as well. But I'm just thinking about that, where it's just like, my brain might answer some situation with a quote from it, where I'm just like, no, we've gone too far. Like, just things like where I don't know. I think about that, and I'm realizing when we were getting into this episode, I'm realizing that, like, whoa, what do I return to? Because we are living in an age of consumption in terms of like media. There's so much to watch. There's so much to play.
Too much.
And
it's too much.
Oftentimes there are things that I'm like, I know that's a favorite. Like The Big Lebowski, I haven't probably watched it since we did the episode of it, but it is one that I can go back to.
That surprises me.
Yeah, I can go back to it. These are things that, like, if I saw it, like, I don't channel surf anymore, so
Yeah.
it's like if channel surfing were still a thing, and I was like, oh, let's see what's on. Oh, Harold and Kumar, I'll watch that. Like, it's like a click. Oh yeah, I remember this, and it's like you can pick it up anytime, like anytime.
Insanely quotable.
Yeah, insanely quotable. There's like so many phrases. Oh gosh, Neil Patrick Harris. There's just so that developed that, and I think, Tom, you made a pre-list on here, so I'm not going to steal it, but I'm just going to say that and How I Met Your Mother gave Neil Patrick Harris love in my life, that I love Neil Patrick Harris no matter what he does. So I can return to Neil Patrick Harris for the 100th time in anything.
Hey, hold on to that one because I may not use it. The one I'm going to use. It's interesting you say we're in an age of consumption and there's so much stuff. I was going to throw the
Would it be better
factoid.
to say consuming? Consumption, isn't that a thing? Like, isn't that like a
Consumption
sickness?
was
That's
what they
dying
called
by-
tuberculosis back
Yeah.
in the day because it would
Yeah.
consume you from within.
Yeah.
If you watch any period piece, like, she died of consumption. It's like,
Yeah.
is that like
I'm
consuming?
going to stick to it. We're living in an age of consumption where you just have to, you're just consuming media. You just like, there's
Yeah.
just so much.
The cynicism consumes. But what I was going to say was I was going to throw the factoid, and it might have changed and grown from the point that when I absorbed the knowledge. But I remember at some point, Markiplier made a comment saying like 800,000 hours worth of content is uploaded to YouTube every day.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like 800,000 hours every day and just nonstop, right? You think about that. And so for me, something that I come back to all the goddamn time, no matter how I get it, and this is like kind of breaking it because it's not like full on, but it's like, I'm going to get my DBZ, my Dragon Ball Z clips from somewhere. And I mean clips. I mean, like, I'm going to type in Gohan versus Cell, Super Vegeta versus Imperfect Cell, or Goku versus the twins in Universal Power Arc. Like all this stuff, like I'll find ways to like recapture Dragon Ball Z. Because if you watch Dragon Ball Z like through and through, good for you. Second of all, I don't got that much time. Third of all, I'm just looking for the shit that like, oh, I need this part. I need like these things that I remember clearly in my head. Like, let me rewatch the history of Trunks. And you're like, oh shit. And like I've sent Corey one where it was like Android 17 versus Piccolo, but some guy dubs it over in a TikTok. And it's like funny as shit because it's like watching someone else's experience of it and their commentary of it is funny because you're feeling like you're watching someone's for the first time experience of it. And it kind of reignites your feeling of it. But like Dragon Ball Z, man, like I don't know which two ways to say it other than like what a interesting, fascinating show to get introduced to as you're like maturing into like juvenile teenagerhood and realizing like, oh, life is hard. You know, shonen animes are all about, you know, progress through adversity and, you know, believing in yourself, even if no one believes in you, and pushing yourself to the absolute limit. But then combining that with like the American dub of the Dragon Ball Z theme, which is which is electric guitar, and then you have like movies that are on Toonami. So like you didn't have this weight that the same Japanese audience had, where they're like, "Here's this arc, wait a couple of months." It was just like episode after episode after episode after episode, and nonstop. And there was blood, and so you're watching cartoons already, but now there's fighting and muscles and blood, and you're like, oh my god, like this is like real shit now. You know, it's like the Shaq meme. It's like I sleep on real shit, and it's like you see this, like okay, I'm here for this. And also they were like kids getting in the fights too, right? There was Gohan and Trunks. And, oh, okay, the kids can actually fight. Like we're not just dumb kids. And you're like, I want to grow up to be like this person or that person. And I just think so much about. I mean, Corey gave me a playmat that has a Dragon Ball Z character. I have a poster of a Dragon Ball Z thing. Like I still have it so deep in my system today. Like I listen to specific excerpts while I go exercise and work out because those are moments where like not like rah rah rah, but it was just like, oh, remember that feeling of like invincibility you had when you were watching that. It's like that's the stuff. And you know, all the gym rats will probably agree in what I'm saying. But Corey.
Yeah, I mean, much to Josh's point, I have my usual suspects that I kind of want to stay away from because I could talk them. I've talked them to death on this podcast. Literally right behind me. So I kind of want to take a detour down some other things I can, because I'm the one person in my family who can watch movies more than like twice. In fact, most movies I like, I'll watch over and over and over again. But the first one that comes to mind is Dumb and Dumber. It is a comfort blanket, 100%. I used to know every single word in the movie, line by line, from memory without it playing. And that's how often I watched it as a kid. I like fell in love with Jim Carrey. I think this was probably around like 5th and 6th grade. I watched it so many times that I could recite it from start to finish without it playing. it's so well done, and I have to accredit, you know, a movie that like as a kid I thought was funny, and now as a 34-year-old I still think watching it today is really funny. Like I just watched it probably like 2 months ago. The fact that, you know, and I read it somewhere, and if someone can find it and post it in our Discord, that would be fantastic because I want to find it again. That Jim Carrey was involved in the casting process of the movie, and to find Harry, who eventually went to Jeff Daniels, and he was like, saw Jeff Daniels audition and was like, that's got to be Harry. And essentially it was because he didn't play it as, oh, look at me, I'm playing a dumb guy. He just played it as a guy who happened to be really dumb. And I think the honesty that they gave their characters in that is what kind of makes it timeless. It's not these like, it's like, it is blue lowbrow humor, but there's a naivety and an honesty that the people playing the characters really believe that these people are sweet people, you know, that you don't get in a lot of those kind of, it's why Dumb and Dumber 2 and When Harry Met Lloyd and stuff like that, like those, you know, the movies like the, you know, what is it? Not none of the teen movie, because that one's good, but of that ilk, like a lot of those don't stand the test of time because they're in on the joke. The people who are playing those jokes are in on the joke. But it's not the case here. Like they're genuinely the best of friends. They, even when they hate each other, you know, you shot my friend, you bastard. Right after he told him to okay, shoot him. Yeah, it's such a fun movie. And I find little moments I love more every time I watch it too, which is fun with those kind of films that you go back to, those comfort movies, because you've seen it so many times that you start paying attention to the little things. But yeah, Dumb and Dumber is up there. It's I think Dumb and Dumber, Tom, I know I said it in the last one, is in my top 10 films of all time. As far as comedies go, I think it makes the cut.
Okay. Well,
that's it. That's my second one.
Josh?
Thanks for listening. If you like what you hear, support the show by joining the Nerd On Nation powered by Patreon. Go to nerdon.tv/Patreon and get Nerd On exclusives for as little as $1 a month. So I'm looking at what I wanted to pull from is something that has been incredibly important in my life, and that's music. And
yeah,
because I realized like the facet of my life has, when I think of experiences in my life of maybe periods of trauma or whatever, the things that got me through were like video games, movies, and music was always like there. Oftentimes I turn to classic rock. I think that there's
Scorpion. I'm just kidding. Out of all the bands I could have named, I don't know why I named Scorpion.
Well, I mean, I think of like things like Elton John.
Sure.
Elton
That's
John,
classic rock.
Billy Joel, Boston.
Billy Joel is so fucking good. It's
so
unreal.
Fucking good. Billy Joel and Elton John, I think when I was a kid, like I had this weird upbringing where I grew up on records. My dad loved to buy records, and it is, I mean, Bonnie thought it was weird when we first started dating. She was like, how do you know the lyrics?
Who's laughing now? Vinyl's outselling CDs.
I know. I cried when Bonnie got me a record player a couple of years ago for Christmas. Like I was just like, to hear that, yeah, it has character and whatnot, but it's just like there's a certain feel to it. But it's just, you know, music, I think I turned to classic rock, disco, like, you know, I love music. And they're like even meditation music. Like when I'm feeling like really like, I turn to music to keep me calm or whatever. And yeah. There could be a slippery slope talking about music, musical theater.
Is there, I guess, you know, because that is a slippery slope, and I'm
for the specificity.
Is there like, can you name like 2 albums maybe that you know you could put on and like listen to front to back? Like one of the first times I ever came to hang out at your house, you put on ELO.
Yeah. I mean,
and I was so excited.
Well, I mean, the thing about, there's like this bullshit thing where sometimes people will be like, oh, a greatest hits album doesn't count as an album. It does. In my opinion, like sometimes with an artist, you can be like,
I wore out my Beatles 1 CD. Thank you very much.
I mean, you bring it up, but like an ELO greatest hits, I'm gonna flip that bitch back and forth like constantly. Oh, I mean, to name a specific album, Elton John's Yellow Brick Road. I mean, that album is just, it's still one of those. I had a couple
By Yellow Brick Road.
Yeah. I really wanted one of not as known songs, but I've seen that movie too. Just, I love that song so much. And I wanted to do a cover of it. And a friend of mine was trying to help me do the chords. And it's a really interesting song. But that whole album is just so good.
Do yourself a favor and go listen to it on your Apple Music or whatever it is. Goodbye Yellow Brick Road, Elton John. He's preaching right now. Josh is preaching.
Preaching. It's so good.
It's lit.
Just back to front, just up and down. Just, I mean, Elton John just is. I realized, that's a slippery slope. Next,
it is. I mean, I'll join in on that. I'll do two at once, and they're kind of short. One of them, because Corey had done a game and Josh had done a game. It's a newer game, and it's a game that like I think it's interesting because how recently I've come back to it so many times has been Golf with Friends. Me and Ian play it so much, not because like we love it, but because like it'll be late at night, we'll have nothing to do, we're completely burnt. Don't want to play a long game. Don't want to play a game where we're having to like, all right, flank over here, blah blah, like all this shit. Like sometimes it's just too much.
You don't want to do like a raid mechanic where you're like, hey, I've got the thing.
You just need to like chill the fuck out. And I've come back to that game so many times, and it's just like, you point your mouse, you click. You point your mouse, you click. And it's golf. It's golf in really dumb places, right? And you're like, it's basically
relaxing. Like it's basically like putt, right? Yeah. My cousin was like, you need to get this one. It's so much fun. And
it's very fun. And our Discord audience have been like, oh, we should all play together. I'm like, oh shit, I want to try to find some time we can play. So maybe my next stream I'll like be like, hey, let's all play Golf with Friends. And the next second one that I'll do real quick is to a music facet. I think it's really funny. It's like it's
Hybrid Theory.
It's not Linkin Park. Well, the one I'm going to mention again for the Corey, as you said, we could do all the ones that we talk about all the time. Even though I have a Hybrid Theory tattoo, I know.
Yeah.
It's Switchfoot.
Oh,
beautiful letdown. I think about this like, man, I have come back to that album so many times in my life. Like I remember listening to it in my 10th grade Mrs. Bissoni's class, honors English class, and like finding out that they're like a religious band, and I was like, what? They're Jesus? And finding that out, I was like, that's crazy. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And then it didn't change anything for me, but like every time I would like wanted to drive somewhere for a long period of time, I would listen to it. When I went through tough times in my life, I wanted to listen. When I wanted to like kind of just like be out in the sun and just kind of like bask in like the vitamin D rays out there, I'm like, I'm listening to some Switchfoot, and like always put me in like a better mood, or sometimes just kind of just there to hold me a little bit. But like I also think like I started listening to that a lot when I was actually like skateboarding too. So like it just brings that back.
Wait,
and so like
I'm sorry. We've been doing this show for almost 6 years. This is the first time I've ever heard you talk about skateboarding.
Yeah, I used a skateboard. I fucked up like a nice pair of new Jordans skateboarding because that's not the shoes you wear to skateboard.
No.
But I didn't know that shit, and I got it like
Vans.
I didn't know, man. I was because this kid's like, hey, come with us. We're gonna do this. I'm like, oh, I don't have my bike. It's like, use a skateboard. It's like, I don't have a skateboard. It's like, you kick and you push. And I'm like, okay. And then I went Mongo for a little bit. And I was like, oh, this is hard as shit. And I skateboarded for like 2-3 years. And like I ollied, I was manualing. I was like, and I would record me and my friends who would do that. And then to the point where like a friend wanted me to like kick flip over their head, and I ended up just kick flipping the board into their face. I was like, I'm done.
Oh no.
I'll be a scooter from now on. So there was that. But yeah, who's next?
That would be me. I had a whole thing going on, but now I want to talk about music. I feel left out. And so, it's same thing. I want to avoid my usual Jason Mrazes and all that good stuff.
Exactly.
So I'll just say a song. I'll change it. It's favorite song of all time. I take it as a good sign when it comes on somewhere. I'm like, something right is happening. No Rain by Blind Melon is my song of my life. And up until a few years ago, I've always said this is my favorite song since I can remember. I think I have like some memory attached to being in a park with my dad and my sister, and it was playing on his boombox. For those of you who don't know what a boombox is, it is a portable stereo. It's like a JBL Bluetooth speaker, except you had to have the tape in it, or you had to have an antenna to get the radio.
What's
You don't know the radio is
40D batteries.
yeah. And so up until like 4 years ago, I brought it up in front of I was like, "What's your favorite song of all time?" And she's like, "No Rain, Blind Melon." And I was like, "Holy shit!" So that must have been a really good day, is what I'm trying to say. And it's yeah, I don't know what it is about that song specifically. Obviously, it was very popular, insanely popular for the time it was out. But it just makes me feel at ease. It's like such a mental health check to hear that song. And I used to put it in like, I used to edit montage videos for my family of like, we had a birthday, so Corey edit the photos for the birthday. And I'd like, that was like my director thing. My like, if you went on my IMDb at the time I was editing videos for my family, they were like, "Oh, editor trademark, No Rain by Blind Melon."
I love that.
Yeah. But man, I love that song so much. Yeah. So that would be my music thing. Now I feel like one of the cool kids. I got in on it.
Hey, you're
I got
cool.
on the music train.
You're cool.
Yeah. What is it? I want to, maybe I'll derail this for a little bit. I know we still have a little more show to go, but like, what is it, I guess, about these things we return to, especially in times of like, when things are tough? Is it the lack of like surprise? Is it the lack of, maybe that's a good thing in those kind of moments? Cause like a lot of the times we return to these things, like Tom, you were saying, or Josh, when we're either a little more stressed or we're worn out and we just need something that feels comforting. Is it that, we know the twists and turns, we feel like we're part of it? What do you think that is?
I think, for me anyway, I think that there's even a nostalgia part of it. I think that there is a return to, a quote, return to innocence, or even just like a reminder of like there are certain albums that I can listen to and I can remember what I was going through at the time and the solace that this particular album brought me in that time.
Sure.
Using a very classic
American Idiot. Green Day.
Yeah. No, Mraz's Mr. A to Z. I know that album back to front, and I remember the time in my life that I was going through when that album came out, and it was always in my stereo. And it's and like even just when I was talking about Final Fantasy VII, I remember the time of my life of playing with Josh, my other friend Josh. These different things. I can remember when I first saw The Big Lebowski, just like, and there is a certain artistic side of it where it's like, this is art. It is legitimately good art, like good songs or good writing or whatever, that you're like, it just brings me a solace of like, I know that this is going to make me laugh and I need to laugh right now. Like I don't need to I don't want to try to fucking dig through the comedy genre on Netflix to try to find something. It's like, I'm going to go to that one thing that I know is going to work. I know it's just going to make me laugh or make me think. Maybe it is a no-brainer where it's like, I just need to like just.
Maybe it's the knowing of like, this is how I want to feel right now. And I know this will give this to me.
Yeah.
It's a sure thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, to add on to that, very much in the same alignment with Josh, but just for me a little bit further.
Yeah.
Is kind of that same thing you were talking about with Dumb and Dumber, where when you re-watch or re-experience it as an older person, you might find something new. I that's exactly how I felt with like a Paramore album, where I was like, holy crap, Rose Colored Boy has a very different meaning than I thought it was. I listened to it once, I was like, oh, this is really cool. And now as an adult, like, oh my God, I understand it. Or there's a bunch of other things too that like you reinterpret it. And actually, again, my friend Ian, shout out to him, like he really kind of opened my eyes to the ideas like, well, the interesting thing about like this crazy experience called life is that, you know, we understand the emotions of anger, sadness, worry and shame and fear. But as you get older, you experience them differently. So when you were a kid and, you know, you lost your favorite toy or whatever it was, or maybe even a family passed away or like an animal pet of yours, you know, passed away as a child, it's very different than having that same feeling happen like when you're in your teens or when you're early adulthood or when you're later adulthood. And so how you process those things and how you kind of prioritize, because you have more experiences to kind of play them with. And so
a little bit,
yeah. And you know, one thing that we talked about before, one episode we did was One Cut of the Dead, and that was going to be one of my options. Like, oh, I love coming back to that movie because I like watching with other people, because I like seeing how they experience it for the first time. Because for me, that's something I don't get a lot anymore. I don't get that big twist feeling anymore, where it's like, oh my God, how surprising! How I never saw this coming. I haven't felt that way about a film in such a long, long time. And so if I get a chance to watch it with somebody, then I'm like, oh, I get to feel that. And like,
by
I think that is,
association, you're like feeling that joy of that's what it was.
And I think that's a little bit of it. We're kind of chasing the dragon a little bit of like, oh, I want to kind of just chase that feeling like how it used to be.
Sorry, that metaphor
chase the dragon,
like, just in association.
I was like, whoa,
it's like, yeah, man, we're chasing that.
I say chase the dragon to anything. I say when you're working out, you're chasing the palm. When you're trying to like make something new, and you get the first cut out, you're like, you're chasing that dragon,
bro.
No matter what, you're always chasing some dragon. You know, they say, because I was already told to not chase waterfalls, so I chase dragons.
Thank you, TLC. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. No. Do we want to name some more, and then or is everybody like I mean, I'm gonna break a rule, kind of, you know, because we talked about music, but now I'm gonna bring my world together. Musical theater. Because musical theater like is something that I return to. It's a big. Been thinking about this aspect of my life a lot, and how much I love musical theater, and how much I should sing more. Maybe this is probably a topic for my therapist, but I'm gonna say it. I have some weird thing like hang up about singing right now that I'm really dealing with, and I probably need to talk to somebody about it. But it's like I've been trying to sing more, because I know that there's a joy that I have with it, and I have a lot of training with it. But musical theater for me continues to this day be something that I always return to. And it brings me a solace. I mean, growing up, it was the Music Man, the Fantastics. Nowadays, I find myself returning to the song Being Alive from Company. It's just a beautiful song. And it's, musical theater, I find myself returning to a lot more recently. And like, just, it's such a beautiful form of theater, I think, because it can be humorous. It can be operatic. It can be,
Yeah.
I dig that. I mean, if we, again, not to get too deep into it, maybe we want to get deep into it. Who gives a shit? It's our fucking show. One thing I would say is there's something, you know, it's kind of like there is a weird phenomena that happens. Like we like to sometimes recreate good and bad things in our life. And obviously I'm going to stick with the good things because I'm coming back to it. But I come back to George Lopez, Why You Crying stand up. I come back to that stand-up. That was my first ever time watching stand-up. And it was on Comedy Central. It was a late night Comedy Central special. And I remember watching that and being like, what is this? I knew what stand-up was, but I never experienced. I never I still haven't experienced it. I still haven't paid money to go watch someone on stage live to go do their stand-up bits or do a special, record a special. But watching this for the first time, I was like, holy shit. This guy or this woman, this person is on stage for 60, 70, sometimes 90 minutes, joke after joke after joke. And they cut out the bad ones. So they're on there for even longer. And you're like, holy shit. So George Lopez, Why You Crying, hit me in such a way. And I'll tell you right now, I don't got the tape no more because I deleted that shit because I know you can buy it. But I for sure recorded that shit on my camcorder, so I would bring it to school and then show my friends to watch it, and we would watch it.
We used to. I used to record on a VHS, Comedy Central, late night. They'd have different comedians, and it was always I remember I'm so excited this person's on Dana Carvey or whatever. It's just okay, I'm going to record that special and HBO. Oh,
when they do the SNL best ofs.
Yeah, that, or just even I remember when Robin Williams HBO special came out, his stand-up special.
2001.
Yeah, that one, that was one I know for sure that I was ready to record. You had to press play and record at the same time. And then you hope the tape's long enough, and you had to make sure that you bought the tapes that were long enough for the specials or whatever that you were recording. It was just,
you know what's crazy? Okay, what is that illegal? I don't think. How is that illegal? Right? Because the VHS,
just what you did.
Well, the VCR had that function built in, so they knew I'm recording something that's broadcasted.
No,
now we live in a world. Yeah,
you just can't sell it.
Yeah,
but now if I were to get a copy that I didn't pay for and play it somewhere, I would get in so much trouble.
Is TiVo still a thing?
Yeah, if you played it somewhere, but you could record it for yourself at home
and then bring all my friends
because
over
it was broadcasting. Yeah, that's fine.
That's so weird.
It's pre-streaming, baby.
Dem laws, bruh.
Dem laws.
Dem laws, bruh.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, to Josh's point, you just couldn't sell it somewhere or hey, we're having an event fundraiser. I'm going to play this thing I recorded off my TV.
No, I would just be like, hey, man, you guys want to watch the thing I recorded?
That's what it was made for, yeah.
Yeah, that's
people would tape the NFL games.
Yeah, because everyone's
they could watch it afterwards.
And I was thinking, then I'm fine. Then I've recorded so much shit. Oh,
you're fine, Tom. You're right.
Am I in
You know
trouble?
his location. Move. He said it. The Eagles landed.
Take the shot.
Everybody knows. Everybody knows he's put himself on blast.
It's Pinkertons. Don't send. No, sorry.
Oh.
No. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Don't harass my neighbors and make my wife cry.
Man.
God Loves Man Kills is my next one.
Okay.
Come back. It's short enough that you can come back to it very quickly.
Yeah. It's like a go-to travel one too. If I'm flying home on my hour-long flight, or if we have a flight coming up in Colorado, I'll probably bring it on the plane with me. I don't know. I think it's just so good. I don't get tired of reading it a bunch of times. I've probably read it, I don't know, since Tom's the one who got it for me. And
there's a reason why we've covered most of the things we've talked about in podcast episodes.
Yeah. I've probably read it 30, 40 times easy. It's like my reset comic book. If I just I feel like reading a comic again, don't feel like pushing myself. It's that I've read Mantle a bunch of times too. I think that one's one that needs to be made into something. I think it's so good. But God Loves Man Kills is one of those comfort ones. I think they just nailed. I think Christopher Claremont just nailed the vibe of what the X-Men are about, and at its core, at its foundation, what the X-Men stand for.
Well, you know why? And I hate to this is going to get a little bit more analytical, but it's because I feel in the weird way, taboo, everyone hates the word subversion because of Rian Johnson. And I'm well, I don't know if you're ready for those kind of conversations, but also a lot of people I don't think like the word deconstruction because of Zack Snyder. But God Loves Man Kills is kind of a deconstruction of it because you take away Xavier, You take
Mhm.
away like, now Magneto's in it. So like you're really kind of stripping down the idea of like what you think the X-Men are. Like, oh, they're
Yeah.
supposed to fight robots and like other mutants and stuff. Like, no, they're fighting racism. They're fighting xenophobia. They're fighting like religious extremists.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't that story. And you really start seeing the true essence of why the X-Men matter. And you're like, oh shit, so.
I think that's exactly what it is. And it's cool it's just cool to see that on the page.
Yeah.
For me.
I mean, if we're also jumping to comic, I hate to take this one from Josh, but I've reread Witches multiple times.
Oh,
I think Witches is actually just so cinematic. It's obviously lends itself to be very adaptable to like the screen, but like I very much enjoy the kind of ebbs and flows of like there's a lot of word, a lot of text on the page to there's no text on page, and I think something like that really kind of like again, like I think most people who like would kind of shy away from a comic, like I don't know where to start, and they're like, I want to do the X-Men, but I don't know what's a good story. It's like God Loves Man Kills is a really good version of it because you kind of know the main strokes. Here's this whole story. But Witches is very much like these are the kind of stories you can get from comic books, and like they're not like deep lored and like a huge franchise. It's like this is just here's a story. Check it out. It's really good.
well, I mean, that's kind of when I think it's Scott Snyder specifically. Because I'm looking at my comic book library on Comixology.
American Vampire.
And American Vampire, like I fucking devoured it. I read it it wasn't like an accident. It was like a Comixology recommended, and it was free, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna try it out. Gotcha. And I just devoured it, and I just got like, and then I was like, this Scott Snyder character, and I started reading all of his stuff, and I think I might be willing to say that I am a Scott Snyder simp. There's also, I mean, I also realized that I'm a Robert Kirkman fan. Like anything, I mean, Invincible, The Walking Dead, like, man, he did something else, but I don't. Oh, it's a more recent one. Outcast. Yeah, Outcast.
Oh yeah.
That's a really interesting one too. No, yeah, is that? Oh, no, that and Oblivion Song is a more recent one. Outcast kind of, I think that ended. Anyway, yeah, those two comic book like writers, I find myself like, oh, if I see that they're like even like returning to 100th time, I think that counts because it's like if I see something that that person made, I'm probably gonna go because I know that I'm probably gonna appreciate their story.
That's a whole other podcast too.
Yeah,
I know.
Nah, I'm saying we could do it too.
We could do it easy.
We could do it like this
Names
writer.
that get butts and seats.
Yeah, this writer, this actor,
if I
this
see
actress,
that name,
this
they're
director.
gonna get my money.
Yeah.
What's getting my money? That's who's getting my money.
Whomst gets my money.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
I feel complete.
I feel complete. I think
I would feel complete if I hear from the audience what things that they always come back to. What things that they've done to Oblivion. I mean, I for some reason when I thought about this, I'm like, man, how many times, Corey, tell me how many times your wife has come back to Gilmore Girls
and Friends.
and Friends. So like, I want to hear your guys's. I can kind of think of other people's, but I want to hear our audience, our listeners, if they're new.
And Vampire Diaries, Tom.
I mean, and here's the thing. If you're new to Nerd On, here's the thing. If you're new to Nerd On, we have hundreds of episodes. In fact, we are now in the 200s of episodes of just Nerd On the podcast. Nerd On the Update has over 200 episodes. We've got the Capeless Crusaders, but if you look at the library that is Nerd On the podcast and you look at all of our episodes, most likely you're going to hear all of our favorites because there are things that we didn't mention to that we've gone into detailed conversations about, like, and I just didn't want to detailed that I just didn't want to rehash. Like Corey said, it's like I think did like whole conversations about certain things that will always be my favorite things. But another way to continue the conversation and tell us your things that you just always return to is go check out our Discord, nerdon.tv/Discord. There are channels in there for movies, TVs, comic books, for this show specifically. And you can join the Nerd On Nation, nerdon.tv/Patreon, and get secret channels for just you. And if, like, let's say you wanted to talk about something that you don't want the whole Discord community to talk about, you can go right to the Nerd On Nation channels. I mean, that's all the pluggy plugs. That's all the business.
I feel plugged.
I feel plugged. You might want to take medication for that.
Or Metamucil.
That's
great.
Never.
Metamucil's great.
But thank you so much for listening. We appreciate you all. Take care of yourselves. Drink water. You know the drill. As always, nerd on.
Nerd on.
Ending broadcast.